Aubrey's Nighttime Adventures, written by Madeline Macry and Jasmine Davis Browning, edited by Amanda Cox and Haley Hammond. It was a Sunday night. The time was 9 o'clock. Young Aubrey Jackson was watching the Weather Channel before bed. She was in the middle of her favorite program, Weather Gone Viral. Just as Jim Cantore was explaining the differences between the Fujita and the enhanced Fujita scale, her mother came over and turned off the television.
Time for bed, Aubrey,
her mother said with a stern sound in her voice. But Mom, that's my favorite show. I need to know the differences between the Fujita and enhanced Fujita scale. Her mother's smile turned to a frown.
No, you have school in the morning. You have a big test in social studies too. Now go upstairs. Good night.
Aubrey stood up, said good night, and walked up the stairs filled with anger. Once upstairs, she began her nightly routine. As Aubrey began her nightly routine, the power suddenly went out. The faint storm in the distance now made its way into their little town. The storm was growing into a ferocious monster. Rain poured down from above, flooding the streets. Hail began to pound on roof and cars, sending the alarms off. Thunder cracked as lightning flashed, making the sky seem bright as day. Dark clouds rolled in, casting a shadow over the town. Even though she was safe inside the walls of her home, Aubrey could hear the wind roaring outside. Most children her age would be frightened, but Aubrey was filled with joy. Excitement burst out of her as she ran to her mother, begging her to let her go outside. Please, Mom, this is my big break. It's my dream to become a storm chaser. I want to attend the University of Oklahoma to study severe storms. And right now, there's a severe storm outside. Please! Aubrey began to make puppy dog eyes in hopes it would help her plead.
No, it's too dangerous. You're just a child. Now go upstairs and go to bed. I'll tell you in the morning if you have school or not.
Disappointed yet again, Aubrey walked to the stairs and up into her room. She finally finished her evening routines and put her pajamas on. She climbed into bed and hugged her favorite stuffed animal tight. It was her penguin, Kaya. She loved her so much, she got her for her 3rd birthday. After laying in bed for a few minutes, she finally drifted off to sleep. She awoke to the sound of a siren. A horn was screaming bloody murder off in the distance. Though far away, it could be heard for miles. She stood up and looked around. It was the middle of the day. The bright yellow sun shone above her head. As she scanned her surroundings, she saw small buildings and people screaming. Where was she? What was going on? She ran over to the nearest person and asked him what the commotion was about.
Run, child! There's a twister coming! Escape to the nearest shelter! Maurice, hurry!
He took off without saying another word. A tornado? She asked aloud to no one. I must be dreaming. Who's Maurice? And OMG, there's a tornado on its way? Yes! Once again, she was filled with excitement. She wanted to chase this tornado, but how could she? She had no especially equipped car to help her track down the tornado. Just when all hope was lost, a car pulled up beside her. The passenger window rolled down, and inside was Jim Cantore. Jim Cantore is Aubrey's favorite meteorologist.
Hey, kid, you need a ride?
A smile about a mile wide was spreading across her face. Yes, sir. May I accompany you in chasing this storm? I want to be a storm chaser when I grow up. I have nowhere to go. Please? Jim Cantore smiled.
Sure, but you're not to touch anything or get out of the car without permission. There's no time to get you to your house, and I can't just leave you on the side of the road. So hop in and get ready for the ride of your life.
Aubrey opened the door and climbed into the car. Her heart was racing with excitement as he drove down the road. They made their way to an open field. The tornado was almost done forming. Seconds later, it touched down and began to cause destruction.
Hey, kid, can you tell me the wind speed?
She looked over at the computer that held data on the tornado. It's spinning at 200 miles per hour, sir. It's grown to a Category 5 in a matter of minutes. Jim Cantore smiled.
Astonishing, isn't it? Amazing the natural phenomena that Mother Nature can create.
Yes, it is. They were talking back and forth about how incredible this was. All of a sudden, the tornado switched directions. It was heading straight for them.
Aubrey, we have no time to turn the car around. We're going to have to stay here and ride out the twister.
He pressed the buttons on the car and 2 rods came out on the sides. Then he pressed some more buttons and they shot into the ground, pinning the car down. As they held onto the seat, bracing for impact, the tornado moved closer. When inside, the car was rocking back and forth. It was possible the rods would give way and they would shoot up into the sky. But Aubrey was not nervous, for this was just a dream. She was very excited to be inside a tornado. She then looked up and could see the sky through the dust the storm had gathered. Debris was flying all around them. She was so happy. This was a dream come true. She looked back at the screen. For some reason, it said Maurice instead of the wind speed. The sky grew darker and darker. Aubrey could make out a faint figure approaching them. It was pitch black and slowly but surely getting closer. "What is that thing?" Aubrey manages to say, pointing out at the strange creature.
Nothing good, I'm sure.
Tori replied. The creature was changing forms as it approached them. With them still being in the tornado, there was nowhere to go unless they were willing to take a risk. The unknown creature is now right at the window. Aubrey's bravery started to fade away, leaving her face pale with fear, for she could clearly see what the creature looked like. It was human-like, pitch black with dark red eyes that glowed and sharp, jagged teeth that could hardly be seen. Suddenly, without warning, it charged at them, trying to break the glass on the van. Wanting to stay safe, Jim Cantori took the stakes out of the ground and pressed on the gas, taking the risk of being swept away by the storm. They took off. The interesting but terrifying creature chased after them, startling them even more. The weather van started to lose traction and lift up off the ground, but they weren't scared, but amazed that they were in the eye of the tornado, which was peaceful. In that time, the creature stopped chasing them. "Hey, I think it's gone," said Aubrey.
Hopefully so. It may be scared of the center of the storm. Want to test that theory?
With that being said, Aubrey started thinking of the dangers that could come with testing this theory, but not wanting to seem like a scaredy cat said, "Yes, let's do it." Once they decided to test their theory, they set up the experiment with Aubrey standing in the eye of the storm and Jim Cantori driving the weather van into the storm. When everything was set up, they got into their positions and tested the theory. As Jim drove out of the storm, he caught sight of the monster, which was surprisingly right behind them. Since the creature was now following him, he drove right back towards the eye of the storm, while constantly checking to make sure he was being followed. As he approached the eye of the storm, the monster still followed with zero hesitation. Once Jim was in the eye of the storm, the creature just stood there for a few seconds, staring, waiting for an opportunity. After a few seconds of staring at them, the creature uttered,
"You won't be safe from me forever,"
in a deep, dark voice that sent chills down their spines. After the creature said this, Aubrey and Jim had a feeling they weren't going to be safe for much longer, so Aubrey hopped in the van and they quietly set back off into the dark, windy storm. When they started approaching the eye wall, nothing could be seen, for it was darker than night by that time. So they stayed in the van to wait for the storm to pass over them, and they stayed in the van for the night. The next morning, Aubrey realized she wasn't dreaming, but was actually with Jim Cantori lost in a tornado. When Aubrey awoke, she tried to figure out how this happened and what was really going on, since it was originally thought to be just a dream. After a few minutes, she woke up Jim, who didn't really know what situation they were in either, just the fact that there was a monster that could potentially kill them. As they looked around, they found that the storm hadn't lightened up the slightest bit. Shocked, they started making theories about this weather and why it was happening. The theories they came up with were, one, that Aubrey's pet penguin Kyan was seeking revenge on her for hugging her too hard, and that Kyan actually had some type of power. Of course, Aubrey kept this one to herself, while Jim thought he was being pranked by his co-worker, Mike Beatties, and that he was just in a highly realistic simulation room. Though the theory didn't seem like it made sense, Jim and Aubrey decided they'd come up with a better one later on as they learned more about what was really going on. So they decided to track down the monster and closely monitor it without noticing. How they were going to do it exactly, they had no clue whatsoever. Since they had the slightest clue to what they were doing, they started brainstorming again. This time, their ideas were more on the daring side, since they would have to leave the truck in order to follow the creature. With a lot of thinking and planning, they finally decided that Aubrey should venture out to see what the monster was doing and report back to the van that won't be far away from her if there was any trouble. So their full plan was to basically try not to be noticed by the strange creature and keep their lives. Hopefully. After a while of being reassured that she wasn't to be perfectly safe, Aubrey was tied to the vehicle by a long rope they had found. The rope was to be used for if she was ever in trouble and needed to be reeled back into the van. As Aubrey got tied up, she started rethinking her decision to go out into the storm to find a dangerous creature that could kill her if it wanted. But instead of going back and potentially seeming like a scaredy cat in front of her idol, she pressed onward, wandering through the storm, nearly being swept away every step. A few steps later, she hears something crack in the distance. As she looks in that direction, she can make out a faint outline of the creature in the distance. Once she realized what the figure was, she fell flat on her face to avoid being seen. Soon after, she lifted her face out of the dirt and tried not to sneeze in order to keep a low profile. she was crawling on her belly towards the creature to get a better look at what it was doing. Once she got close enough, she made a mental note of everything the thing did, even the way it walked and where it went. After a while, she tugged on the rope in order to be pulled back to the van and report back to Jim on what the monster did. As soon as she stopped pulling on the rope, she shot back, fast as lightning. Jim was pulling her back quickly. At the speed she was moving, he must have been as strong as an elephant. Moments later, she landed right next to him at the side of the van. She stood up and started telling Jim all that she'd seen. "It was incredible, sir. The monster was taller than the van itself, and it walked over to the right. It was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. Absolutely outstanding." With all this new information, they still couldn't come up with a good theory to save themselves from the creature and stop this never-ending storm.
Aubrey, I have an idea. In order to stop the monster, you need to stop it with the greatest hero of all, Bill Nye the Science Guy. With his theme song, the monster will be defeated.
"How is that supposed to kill the monster anyway?" Aubrey replied.
The amazing tune will cause the monster to explode,
Said Jim.
Sing it, Aubrey. Sing, Bill, 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 Bill Nye the Science Guy.
"How is that supposed to work if we don't know its weakness? This is reality, remember?" Aubrey said.
Just sing it!
Jim screamed. "Fine." Aubrey got tied back up to the van and set to find the creature again, hoping Jim's plan would work. This time she quickly finds the monster since it was speeding towards her. Then, with all her strength, she sang, "Bill, Bill, 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 Bill Nye the Science Guy." At that moment, the monster grabbed Aubrey by the arm and threw her into another dimension, causing her to fall into a coma. Since Aubrey was now in an unknown dimension and unconscious, there was nothing more to be done, and Jim fled the scene since he was the one to tell her singing Bill Nye would make the monster disappear. As he drove off, he said to himself,
She trusted me, and now she may be gone forever.
The storm still continued, the monster is still loose, the girl is gone, and Jim may be the only one left to know. Well along with the strangely aggressive penguin, is this the true ending? And yes, this is. For Aubrey will never return and is now trapped in another dimension where she will live out the rest of her life. Disclaimer! Jim Cantore would never do that in real life! Good afternoon. I hope you all enjoyed the story. I had a lot of fun making the video version. But before my presentation ends, I'd like to take a moment to share with you information I'm sure you're very curious to hear about. It's the differences between the Fujita scale and the enhanced Fujita scale. If you remember from paragraph 1, Aubrey was watching the Weather Channel. Jim Cantore was explaining these differences before the television was turned off, so I'll tell them to you. But before we begin, I'd like to share with you some background information so you know what we're talking about. The Fujita scale was created by Tetsuya Theodore Fujita. He was a severe storm researcher for the University of Chicago. In 1953, he moved from Japan to the United States to continue his work as a meteorologist. His work is very fascinating, but I'll skip ahead. In 1971, he released the Fujita scale. This scale measures the severity of a tornado based on wind speeds and damages. I drew up a diagram to help visualize this. In the green is the Fujita scale, and the blue is the enhanced Fujita scale. As you can tell, the wind speeds are a bit different. This is because the Fujita scale isn't as accurate as the enhanced Fujita scale. At the time, they were just educated guesses. Now these wind speeds are scientifically proven. So, in 2007, the United States adopted the enhanced Fujita scale. And in 2013, Canada adopted the enhanced Fujita scale. Thanks for listening. Oh, and did you hear the story about the tornado? There's a twist at the end. Okay, no more jokes. For more information about weather, watch the Weather Channel. Thanks for participating in this video. This is Meteorologist Macry for the art class.